Welcome to episode 2 of the Reality Creators Podcast. I have Larry Antiporda here, and Larry's been an incredible mentor of mine, an incredible teacher, just a really smart guy who's achieved a lot. And so, Larry, I'd love to just ask you right away. Like, I know that you immigrated to the U.S. I'm curious,
Yes.
like, how has your origin story and getting to where you are now? How have you seen reality creation, and how have you thought about how you are physically creating that reality?
Man, that's such a great question, right? Like, I think one of the biggest things that I even tell my guys this is the more clear that we're on in our origin story, the more clear that we are in our values and what we want to create in the world, right? And so I'm someone that is an immigrant. I'm a first generation immigrant, came from the Philippines, was born in like Makati City near Manila in the Philippines. So I always grew up with kind of that like hustle mentality, right? And I think that's why it initially, at least in the beginning, translated well into like sales and business, right? So I immigrated from the Philippines to America when I was 4 years old. And I remember, man, it was the position where I went from living in this like one bedroom tiny home in my grandma's house, right, with like seven other people living there, like literally taking poops outside in the outhouse, right, like taking a bath like in a bucket. Like this is the life I grew up in. To then when I landed in California and saw the Golden Gate Bridge, I was like, man, this is a different world. It doesn't even look like the planet Earth that I knew, right? And so it really helped me understand that like reality is shaped from whatever is in our own like lens and the things that we have in our mind, right? I remember when I was in the Philippines, I would see America in the TV, but it felt like this faraway land. But when my mom and dad told me like, hey, we're moving here, it started to become real. And then throughout the years, obviously living the more American lifestyle, year by year, it started to unfold. So that was the biggest thing for me in my origin story, man, was realizing that we have the power to create our own reality. That we have to start with one first step, which is we got to see in our mind's eye first, right?
Yes, I think that is the biggest thing that some people find challenging, or they can see some stuff in their mind's eye, but they can't see other things in their mind's eye. So I'm curious, like, do you have any way that you consciously create this or practice so you can see things better in your mind?
Yeah. So the biggest thing for me is like the biggest mistake that people have when it comes to like visualization or being able to breathe like our inner world into our outer world. I think the biggest thing is we're just not aware of our like physiology first and like neurochemistry. So I come from a place of like, I'm very connected with my own spiritual life, right? I have a really good relationship with God. I have my spiritual life. But then there's also the science aspect of things, which is our natural neurochemistry, right? So I think a lot of people just come from it from the lens of visualization from a spiritual side, possibly. But I like to combine the two, the science and the spirit, right? And what that means from a neurochemical level is that I always want to put myself in state before I step into visualization, right? Like I want the dopamine, the serotonin, like I want the perfect chemical cocktail before I really step into the spiritual lens. And so what I usually do in the mornings, man, is I usually like love getting just my quick morning walk and like vitamin D. As soon as I wake up, my first thing I'm doing is I'm like walking in the streets of New York and just looking at the sun, right? Because I need to wake up my mind first before I like step into visualization. I used to come from a spot where it was like I would just visualize first thing that I wake up, and I realized like sometimes I'd fall back asleep because I was like still sleepy, right? So I think the biggest thing is like step one, get my walk, get the blood flowing, get the sun in my eyes, make sure that I'm actually waking up my mind. And step two, what then I then go into is actually reading my Bible. So I step into that spiritual side of like connecting with my source. And then step three is then when I step into like meditation that eventually becomes visualization. So I have a three-step process in the morning, right? And it's the biggest thing is like I want to step into, I call it my three B's in the morning, which is Bible, breathe, and body. And so Body is obviously moving the body when I'm coming into like, my walks. The Bible is when I'm stepping into reading the Word of God, and then breathe is when I'm like doing a mix of like breathing exercises with meditation and breath work to step and then to my visualization. So that's my morning process, man. That's how I do it. That's what's worked for me recently, and through trial and error throughout the years, I've stepped into that.
It's interesting. I'm seeing more and more people talking about reading the Bible and that helping them in their process of visualization or creating their life. And I have also been opening back up the Bible and reading through, and it seems to me like most of the courses and self-help concepts and books and everything are in some form a derivative from the Bible.
Yeah, 100%, man. It truly is. A lot of this wisdom that you typically see in the self-help books, which I love, right? A lot of that original source does come from the wisdom of the Bible. I've noticed that as well.
I've been having Carl Jung come across my awareness nonstop, as well as I think his name's James Murphy. Do you know either of these guys?
Carl Jung, 100%. I don't know so much about James Murphy. Is James Murphy the guy who did the hero's journey? Or no, that's Campbell. That's Joseph Campbell, I think.
No. Who? The book that I'm reading right now. I'm trying to pull it up for you. Uh, but he's talking a lot about prayer in reality creation and the importance. Like he basically said, this book's about reality creation, but I'm going to teach you how to pray.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Dang.
it is very interesting. So, have you studied much of Carl Jung's work or no?
A little bit. I actually studied a lot of Carl Jung when I was in, funny enough, high school and college. So I was really into psychology, and I still am. It's part of why I love sales. Is like it's a game of psychology, right? And Carl Jung actually helped me a lot when I was like in high school and like senior year and like stepping into college. It made a lot of like context and order in my very chaotic mind at the time, and it started to help bring context to like how I not only saw the world but most importantly saw myself, if that makes sense.
Wow, that's incredible. How did you get to become such a good communicator?
Dude, so this ties back to my origin story. I I actually discovered this. I was at an event in Miami this past weekend, and I discovered this, funny enough, in a breathwork session. So going through really guided breathwork session, and I got reminded of a memory of mine when I was 6 years old in kindergarten. And so it was my first day of kindergarten, right? And I was in a point where, back to my origin story, I didn't really know English because I was stepping into um, stepping into a new home, right, a new country. And so what ended up happening was I was at a point where first day of kindergarten, I know no English, people trying to communicate with me, and I want so badly to communicate with them, but I can't because I don't know the language. So I went home crying to my mom, and I remember practicing English with her that day. And obviously, I'm 6 years old. I don't know that English is not going to happen overnight, right? But it was that specific moment, Jeff, that I realized I wanted so badly to connect and to be seen by other people, right? To be seen by other people. And I felt like I was in the shadows for so long while I was going through kindergarten because I couldn't communicate. So then what happened? Over the next 1 to 2 years, I worked my butt off to get really good at English and communicating with people. It was to the point where I went from like not being able to communicate with people to being like just the popular kid in school. I couldn't shut my mouth. To the point where I was talking so much, like the teacher was like, "Shut up," right? And so it was a natural like inclination for me to then get to the point where I just wanted to be as good as possible communicating so I could do two things: to connect and to be seen. And that theme just continued on throughout my whole life till eventually it was the natural progression where after college it was like, okay, well, I'm a good communicator. How can I actually make a living off this? And that's really where sales came in, right? And so my mission is this, man. This mantra came to me. This was like, I call it, like, this happened to me like a couple days ago. I was in breathwork. A mantra kept coming to me. I don't know where it came from, but it just came from. I don't know if it was God or my voice, my ego. I don't know what it was. But there's four things. I call it my creative light, right? Number one, God will always see me. Number two, I choose to always see myself. Number three, I'm at peace if others choose not to see me. Because number four, I will always choose to see them. So my
Wow.
mission and purpose is to be the light to see others. Because I always wanted to be seen growing up. And so my mission is to make sure I'm the light that sees that one person who's never seen in their life.
Interesting. And um, as far as we go later more deeply, did you feel like that being seen and connecting? Do you feel like that was lacking from like childhood, your parents?
So here's the thing, man. I think about this a lot. I don't think it was lacking in terms of like what my mom and dad could give. Like, I don't think my mom and dad never came from a place of like not wanting to love me. In fact, my parents love me so much, right? Like, I'm so grateful for them. I think it came from a place of insecurity and circumstance. And here's what I mean by this. So, my dad, when he immigrated to the U.S., he just wasn't obviously home, right? He had to be in the U.S. He had to trailblaze, right? And I love him and I honor him and I'm so grateful for that. So I think part of it was just like I had to step into that realization that 50% of my parents could not see me, right? Like my dad wasn't there for that first half of childhood, and when we were in America, but the thing was he was working two jobs, so I maybe see him in the morning if I woke up like early enough, but I'd usually only see him for a little bit at night. So I think that definitely affected me in the aspect of like wanting my dad to see me, right? And I noticed, like, for example, I was a kiss ass in school, and I was a straight A student because I always wanted my mom to see me do well in school, and I excelled at basketball because I always wanted my dad to praise me and acknowledge me when I was doing good on the court. So there's always that element of like me being very like an achiever, like I'm a three in the enneagram, because I wanted my parents to see me. And I don't think that they deprived me of that. I just think I had like this high need as a kid to be seen. And as I've grown and matured, I realized like obviously that's not the healthiest thing. So I've come in from a place of like reframing that to I'm full. I see myself. God sees me. I'm already at that place where I'm at full capacity. Now with a full cup, I want to be able to see others and be the light for them.
Yeah. I asked, I didn't know if you were expecting to get that deep this early on in the podcast, but I asked because I just went to a retreat with Danny Miranda and we did a guided meditation that what we came up with was what we didn't feel like we got from our parents, usually specifically our father. And then he's
Wow.
like, and if you look at this, this is your gift. Like, this is the thing that your purpose will be around. And
Nice.
it was for me, it was for everybody else that we talked to. It sounds like there's alignment there with what you just shared.
Man, that is so powerful, right? Because it is the thing that we were possibly missing or deprived of our void that ends up becoming our gift. And also, by the way, Jeff, let me know if my Wi-Fi is a little choppy. I can switch over to the hotspot. It's been a bit choppy all day.
It seems like it is, but I think River is, I don't know how it works. I think it's fine. I think it records locally, so it won't be an issue.
Cool. Awesome. Cool.
Yeah. So, I'm curious, like, you've excelled obviously at stepping into going from like a very low point of not being a communicator to how you communicate now. And you, I think I saw recently you're saying that you should not have quit your job to go all in on sales. Like you did it early. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
So tell me what gave you the courage to quit your job when you didn't have like a fully fleshed out plan.
Yeah, like what gave me the actual inspiration was like, hey, dude, let's just do this thing.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, right? I I'll talk a little bit about that tweet because let me give context for like the people who haven't seen that tweet by chance. Um, but the craziest thing was what I didn't get a chance to explain on that tweet was like you got to have self awareness, right? Like you got to know your nature. And part of that reason why I went all in is because I'm a very like all in or no nothing type of guy, right? So I knew that if I like just chilled with golden handcuffs for years, I would have been too scared to like make that leap, right? So that was the thing. That's why I'm like, don't recommend this for 9 out of 10 people. But personally speaking, I was self-aware enough that it's like I'm a burn the bridge type of guy. Like when I'm like tapped into something, I get obsessive, and it's not always good. That's just how my mind works. But it works to my favor because I know how to use it, right? But it's also the way that if I'm like 50-50 on something, I'm just never going to do it. So that's like the biggest thing for me is first give that context, right? Now, to answer your question, what gave me courage was a specific moment. So I always had this feeling of like wanting to be like in sales or at least entrepreneurial growing up, right? There was always kind of an element of that. So what happened was I was in a place where I was in a crossroads, right? And I had gone through college. I'd worked really hard, like through school, and like worked really hard in getting like these really good internships. And I was working a full time job while I was in college. Like I was busting my butt to like go and climb the corporate like sales ladder, right? And what ended up happening was I got to the quote unquote pinnacle like kind of early on. So what I mean by that is like I remember I was looking at like top companies to work for in college, and the number one company that year was Salesforce. And I told myself, I was like, why not shoot for number one? Let's figure out what's going. And what happened was I figured out how to get into the side door and end up landing an internship. And after that internship, I actually had gotten an offer to work with Salesforce. So it would have been a comfy 6-figure salary at a great company, the number one company to work for at the time. All my friends and family were congratulating me. Like they say, "Man, you made it! You made it! You made it!" And I remember after getting at the end of the internship, I was sitting in my Prius in my car, and I had like 2 weeks left, and I had like the opportunity to accept the offer. And I remember sitting, I was like, "Is this what it feels like to have made it?" Because this kind of sucks. Like I don't feel good. I don't feel that great, right? I wanted to be happy, and I was trying so hard because all my friends and family were like congratulating me, but it just didn't feel alignment. So then I remember sitting in that car, and I was like, I'm going to say yes to this offer, but if I do, I'm going to be giving up my real identity. And it was the identity that people wanted me to be, as opposed to like the true nature and identity that I wanted to be. And it goes back to my whole nature and origin story, man. I was always saying yes and doing things for other people because I wanted to be seen. And I was like, no, dude, I want to see myself for the first time in my life. And that's when I
Yes.
was like, screw this. I don't care what other people like do. This is for me. And I decided not to go forward with an offer. I gave the email. I was like, hey, thank you for everything. This is not the path I'm going. So that then led to me stepping into entrepreneurship. 2019, I launched my marketing agency with my business partner, and I went all the F in. And what was crazy, man, was it was like I had gotten this nice place in San Diego with a pretty like not easy rent to pay for at someone who's 22 years old with no job, no income coming from my business, just a dream, just a handshake in a coffee shop with my old business partner. And I started my journey. And the courage to answer your question was the fact that I would know at the end of the day, would not have any regrets if as long as I went for it. But I would have a regret if I went through that whole process and never lived the dream, or at least attempt to live the dream that I always wanted. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's powerful. So, was it just in that moment, shortly before graduating, that you knew that it was out of alignment, or did you know for a long time, but like kind of with intuition or whatever, but you were like denying it or suppressing it or like trying to justify that it was the right way?
So I think for so many years, I think I was just always like trying to like suppress it, right, and trying to deny it, like you said. Um, I think that was a turning point because I was always like going back and forth and always doing some sort of side hustle. Um, and at the end of the day, I think that was the point where I was just like, I'm done. And it was like a breaking point for me, man. It was a point where I was just like, I remember looking back in that moment and like that was it. Like, let me get something for you real quick, right? So I still to this day have that Salesforce backpack that I got that summer, and I still use this damn thing. And I use this backpack, man, because it's a reminder for me on that decision I made that day, right? So it's like, because you have your doubts, right? Anyone who's watching this who's gone through entrepreneurship or thinking about it, it's like the doubts don't stop when you make the decision, right? Like you're 4 into it, you're 5 into it, like you're still like thinking that's like, oh, it's so much easier if I just go back. It's like those thoughts don't stop. But the truth is like it's just that point where it's like I'm so deep into it now where it's like I don't care if I have that thought. It's just a thought. It's not the reality. You know what I mean? So it's like that to me is just the anchoring point. And this backpack is, dude, it's so beat up. It's like it's already like it's literally tattered. Like I can barely close this thing, and I'm still using it. I don't know why. I probably should get a new backpack. But it's a reminder every time of where I started in the decision that I made that day.
Yeah, that's incredible, especially that you keep the backpack. How old were you when you made that decision?
So let me see, 21 years old, 21. So I was 21 years old, and that was now 6 years ago. Yeah.
That's amazing. You found it out early enough. I had that realization with my government job after I'd already worked there. Right? Like after I got hired, went through all the training, I was like, I don't want to do this. It's like bummer. Too bad. Now I got to figure out what I do want to do. And it took a while for me to finally get up and leave. Right? Because it was the golden handcuffs. So you paid very well, had good benefits and all that stuff. And like on paper, it was the dream. It was the field that I went to college for. But it seems like the people who don't make the pivot once they figure out what they really want to do, because I knew for a long time that I wanted to do something in the wellness space, and I knew that that wasn't even close. Um, so yeah, it's interesting that deep down we already know the answer a lot of the time. It's just if we will actually step into that like intuition or that feeling that we have. I'm curious what your experience with intuition, or do you have any crazy stories that like just because of intuition it saved you or put you in a really good spot?
Yeah, like leaning into like the intuitive side, like where is that, right?
Yeah,
Man, so intuition is I have a really like awesome relationship with it because that is like what I would say is my superpower, right? Like I'm an ENFP in the like Myers Briggs, and like the N is for intuitiveness, right? And I would say a lot of my earlier like just strength and was getting lucky because I was so intuitive about things and like very like in touch with my inner emotions and my inner like gut feeling. And so I would say that it's been a mix of like every important decision in my life has been me centering myself coming from a gut decision, which is really funny. I don't, I'm not a very like crazy left brain person who makes like I haven't always made the most calculated like data driven decision when it comes to the most important decisions of my life. When it comes to like like decisions that I need to make from a work standpoint, like I'm able to like make that off like data driven decisions. But when it comes to like life standpoint, like almost never. It's always been like me praying, me meditating, me visualizing it, me like tuning in. Every big fundamental like life decision I have to make has always been intuition based. Where like every work and business has been a mix of both, but a lot of it has been very left brain or analytical or data driven, which is actually funny now that I'm reflecting on this. But I'd say intuition has taken me so far, and I will continue to use my gut and my intuition when I make decisions, just because it's served me so much to this point that it only gets better and better the older I get and the more I use it.
Yeah. Have you ever gotten an answer like in a dream where you've been praying about something and you're like, boom, that's the missing piece?
Dude, so I wouldn't say I've made a life altering decision from a dream, but I get a lot of what I call downloads. I get a lot of downloads from dreams. So what I mean by that is like I get a lot of like business ideas and content ideas and training ideas from my dreams, funny enough. So there's times where like my piece of content that I posted was actually like an idea that I got from the dream, which is pretty funny. But I've got a lot of ideas for like random things, miscellaneous things from dreams, but not so much like crazy like life altering decisions.
Yeah. Downloads from your dreams. That's really interesting. Are you is it like some form of symbolism that then you interpret as something else, or is it like like when you can see something in your mind's eye, you see a clear picture of?
Can you repeat that question again?
Yeah. So when you get like this flash or this download from a dream, does it come in the form of a metaphor typically, or something where it's like you then reasoned, or like that dream doesn't make any sense, but when I think about it more, now I can understand it? Or was it like you talked to a person who had the answers and was like, this is what you should do? Like, was it very clear of a message?
Yeah, man. So, it's actually the latter. So what I mean by that is it's usually people that show up in my dream giving me answers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I
And
had
real
an
quick,
experience
Jeff,
like that.
let me try switching to my hotspot because my Wi-Fi is really choppy. So I'm gonna switch to my hotspot real quick.
Okay.
Okay, I think I'm back in action. Okay, can you hear me now?
All right. Yeah.
Cool, man. All right.
Seems to be seems to be better.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, so um, is there anything that like comes up in general, something that you have known that you need to do now, or that you've been putting off that you should be doing now or in the near future, but that like intuition's telling you to do it, but for whatever reason you have resistance towards it?
Yeah, 100%. Get a girlfriend. It's funny. That's that's the intuition that like comes up. Like, and I'll tell you, going back to the dream thing, I've been having these recurring dreams of like finding this girl that I keep meeting in my dream, and I have no idea who she is because she's not anyone that I know. But I have this like recurring dream of this girl that keeps popping up, and it's kind of like it's pretty much the same girl, but I don't know who she is because I've never met her. So that's been happening like the past like 3 months. So I'm like, all right, maybe I'm getting a nudge to like step into a relationship this year. So that was actually one of my goals that came up was like, all right, cool. Like I've been single and I've been happily single, and I'm like haven't been pretty averse to being in a long term relationship for a while. Now it's like, all right, cool. Like I'm open to that long term relationship. So I'm putting it out there and like to the world, to the universe. Like my intention is like, yep, I'm open to it now. So funny enough, going back to the whole intuition, dreams kind of coming together, it's like that's something I've been for sure putting off because it's like I'm such in a work and like wealth and like business building season right now that it's like, that's not really a priority intellectually, but my subconscious mind and my intuition's telling me something different. So I'm like, all right, I guess I need to like tune in and like what
Mm,
might be there, right?
yeah, that's incredible self awareness. Um, Shortly before I found my now wife, I had written
Wait,
out
hold
as
on,
I
hold
was
on.
journaling.
Now, wife, did you propose recently, bro?
You don't know that? Yeah, I got married in January.
Oh man, I didn't know that. Wow, congrats.
Thank you. Yeah. So I guess you probably wouldn't have known. Um, yeah, got married in January. Have been like we're getting all set up here. I'm in Colombia again, and just
Wow,
loving the
man.
life down here. So
Wow, I'm sending you love, man. That's awesome. That's wow. We haven't caught up in a while then. That's funny.
thank you. Yeah, it was, and you mentioned before having aversion to long-term relationships. I realized that I had an aversion to long-term relationships for the longest time, and
Hmm.
that showed up until I was more self-aware and looked at things. I realized that was a pattern that repeated itself. But what I was gonna say, just before I drop that bomb on you, that you're like, wait, what? Is that I wrote out who my dream girlfriend was, and apparently she did the same thing, and we like very well fit into that one page journal session.
Wow, dude, that's
So
phenomenal.
incredible. How that works, I don't know, but it seems to be in alignment with,
Can we talk about that real quick? Because that's phenomenal, man. Right? Like I hear that from not just you. I've heard that from multiple people. Like my friend Nick had done that. There's another business owner I recently talked to who did the same thing, and it's like that makes sense because I did that in my business life, right? Like this view that I'm looking at in New York City was literally on my freaking like my identity document, my like vision, because you've seen it, Jeff. Like I've shown you my virtual vision board, right? Like that view and like the vibe of that, what I put on my vision board in Notion when like I first moved here to New York a year and a half ago was like what I want to live in, and it brings me literally like brings me so much joy and gratitude that like I'm just living it now. Like, this is it. So it's the same process. Like I wrote it down and I wanted to see how I felt and what the view was and stepping into visualization. It's like now this is just my life, which is awesome. And it's like, all right, well, why don't I do that for my future girl, like my long term relationship? Like obviously it works. So it's funny how we can do things in certain areas of our life, but like forget to kind of do them in other areas, if that makes sense. That's something that I like need a reminder in often.
yeah, I think it's common. Have you ever noticed when you're coaching people that you're telling them something, and then as you're telling them they need to do this thing, you're like, huh, I should probably do that more.
Yeah. It's like it brings you back in congruence and alignment with what you're doing, right? Like it's funny when I'm doing like sales coaching and I'm like reminding my guys and my gals like the good habits of sales, and I was like, hey guys, this is what I did, which is true. Like I did those things. I was like, wait, I have. Then I think, but I was like, wait, when was the last time I did a call review of my own call? I was like, okay, cool. I need to go do that. So it's going back into like practicing what you preach, right? And here's the thing: like, no person's gonna be perfect. We all need reminders. We all get off the wagon and come back on, right? But it goes back to like what we talked about. It's just like being in full alignment to everything, right?
Yeah, you'll feel it when you're not in alignment, is what I've noticed. And it's like this deep down nagging pit or whatever you want to call it of like, it's not sustainable. And it's interesting, like, I kind of think this is what the midlife crisis is. And usually it stereotypically happens to men at 40 when they go buy the nice car. I think it's that they never actually listened to the call and went and changed what they were doing and instead took the safe, comfy route and then realized, oh no, like I'm trapped now. And they get themselves to a point when even then they're not trapped, but it's a lot harder to leave at 40 with kids in a house.
Yeah, that's it, man. And it's like it's a mindset block, right? When we're talking about mindset, it's like you almost have this self-imposed box that you've put yourself in, and you're too scared to actually crawl out of the box, right? Like for example, I talk with a lot of people on some of these sales teams. When I hop on sales calls for some of my sales teams to just like get revenue and get training, it's like I talk to a lot of 9 to 5ers. And I remember I was talking to this one guy who was like in his 60s the other week, and he was talking so much about how he wanted to leave his 9 to 5, and we were getting right to the point where he was like ready to do it, but then kind of just like hit that barrier right at the end. And you realize, man, it's like you're trying to reprogram 40 years of like golden handcuffs on someone. And the truth is, it's not just like golden handcuffs. The truth is, it becomes more like these cinder blocks that get bigger and bigger and bigger each year, the more that you procrastinate on actually taking that leap, right? And so I almost gave myself one of the greatest gifts, which was starting young when the golden handcuffs were actually very light and they're easy to break out of. Where a lot of these people who are starting it way later, I'm talking like the 50s and 60s, they're like trying to get out of like the golden cinder blocks, bro. They're like their hands are strapped in, like their feet are strapped in, like they're blocked. They got to go through this like cinder block door. Like they have so many more obstacles to overcome in their head because it's been so many years of programming.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the programming and the conditioning of society. I was reading, do you know who Dan Coe is?
Danco, yeah, I love Danco. I'm actually in one of his like courses.
Oh, nice. Yeah, very deep thinker, very interesting. The way that he can articulate his ideas was talking about how society's all made up. That like teachers were taught by other teachers, which were taught by other teachers, which were taught by other teachers, and so like where did the knowledge actually come from? As well as like your goals being chase the job, to chase the car, the house, and things like that. When that wasn't actually a self-generated goal; it was just programmed into you.
Yeah.
So interesting to obviously you noticed you didn't want it very early. Me, I am a bit older than you, so I don't know if there was just less information at the time, or I just had to actually go through the process of going to the job that I didn't like. Um, but the longer people wait, the less likely they'll leave for sure.
Yeah, man. And you said it. It was like this idea of so one of the biggest things is like have you heard of this idea called mnemonic desire? Mnemonic desire is like what it's called. I think I'm butchering the
I
name.
know about these words, but I haven't heard it yet.
So I actually learned this from like Taylor Welch. from like the old traffic and funnels guy. He runs his like a new business now, the Wealthy Consultant. But he talks about this thing that our desires and sometimes our goals aren't actually ours. They're actually just like society's goals for us, and like the marketing and like the ads that we see that we think now we want that, right? And I have definitely like lived into that like reality for like a while. Gotten better about it of like getting very clear on like what is it that Lawrence Antiporda actually wants, not like what society wants for me, what my parents want for me. But like for example, like for anyone in watching this, it's like you want a Lamborghini not because maybe you're a car guy, but maybe because you just see other people who are successful have a Lamborghini. So it's like you want this Lambo. So I was in San Diego, and at the time back in 2020, I think late 2021, I'd cashed out a lot on crypto, and I was like, dude, I want to buy this like Mercedes Benz, right? Like I can buy it in cash if I want to. And I was like trying to convince myself that I was like a car guy and that I like wanted the Mercedes Benz and all this stuff. I went through this whole like thing. I was like, I'm a car guy. I can't wait to post this. And then what happened? Well, I moved to New York. You don't need a car here. In fact, it's a liability. And you know what, Jeff? I haven't thought about getting a Mercedes Benz one time. I don't even fucking want it. I realize that I'm not even a car guy. That doesn't really have to do with anything in my happiness. In fact, I'm actually happier not having a car. And I'm like, man, what the hell was that? I was going to spend all this money on a car that I didn't even really want, but it was like the thing that I thought I wanted because other people wanted it. And so what started to happen for me was I started asking myself the hard questions like, what is it that I actually want in my life? What are the things that actually matter to me? What are the things that like is that kind of the mimetic desire that is just like the thing that I see on the ads and I want that just because that's what people want. And I had to get very real with myself this past like year. So with that being said, it goes back to like the coaching industry and like the coaching world, y'all. It's like before you buy the thing from the guru and you want that business or you want the 100K per month business, like ask yourself, is that what you want? Or is that what like the guru is like selling you in the ads? Right. And so everyone has their different wants and needs and their own North Star. We got to get focused on our North Star first though.
Yeah. I think I got it from a Jack Canfield book. It was literally just three questions. What do you want? And then like journaling, pen and paper. What do you really want? And what do you really, really want? And it's very interesting how that simple of three questions, the last answer is so different than what you want. You see the surface of the conditioning in the first answer, and then you go deeper, and then you go deeper, and you know, for a lot of people, it ends up being more towards freedom and time with their family and things like that. So interesting that just three targeted questions can get you there. Do you have any other questions or any thoughts on
Those things.
getting self-aware
Man,
of yourself?
Yeah, man, those questions are powerful. It's similar. So it's literally the same question, but like Bob Proctor, he's an old mentor of mine, like rest in peace, man. He was the guy that really got me into personal development. I don't know what it was, but it was the way he had said it when I actually had met him like live and I saw one of his talks. He says it like this. He goes, "What do you really want?" And just the way he would say that would click in my head. It was like, damn, bro, like what is it that I really want? And the energy, the vibration, the frequency behind the way he would say it would almost always like take off the ceiling of my current level of thinking. And so it's goes back to what you said, like we got to get clear on our vision, what is it we really want, and go beyond the surface level, because it's not a matter of just doing this one time, right? It's a matter of asking yourself this multiple times, over and over, stress testing it, like thought experiments through it, like, you know, maybe achieving that thing only to realize that that's not what you actually wanted, and it gives you clarity in what you actually want. So it's the level of self-awareness, the question asking, but then also going there to just taste test it. So here's what I mean by this. almost full circle back to the thing with like Salesforce is I almost had to go through that season of taste testing what it would feel like to be on top of the corporate world only to realize that's not what I actually wanted. And the only reason why I get closer each year to what I call that ikigai, you probably have heard about it, right, Jeff? It's like, what you're good at,
Oh yeah.
what you get paid for, what the world needs for you, right? And then what you're like passionate about, right? Your ikigai. So the way that I've personally found that I get closer and closer to my ikigai is being relentless about trying a bunch of different things, right? And not getting too sucked into the rabbit hole that might not serve you. But what I've noticed is each year especially in the beginning, like there's like a 3 years like span where I just like was trying a bunch of things, drop shipping, affiliate marketing, like agency world, right? Like e-com. So I taste tested all these different things to realize the gem, what I don't want. So to me, it was not a waste. It was not a waste of time because it allowed me to gain clarity on my ikigai. It got me clarity on what I didn't want, which is often more of the indicator of how to get you to what you actually want. Because it's really hard at first to figure out what you want when you have limited experience or context. So the best way to do it is figure out what you don't want. Fail, get back up, and get closer to that ikigai, that bullseye, with each subsequent venture, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that resonates so much. I had to get 8 calls on the calendar for 8 calls a day for 2 straight years to realize, wait a minute, this is not what I want. This is just a job again.
Yeah.
So, I thought I was getting freedom, being able to travel and take remote Zoom calls, but when you got nonstop calls, I realized that I learned a lot about sales, and that's why I got into sales in the first place, not to actually be in sales long term. So it's interesting seeing that, and now I have the skill, which is great. But wow, needing to be there or have something before you realize that you really don't want it. I've heard that about billionaires, for example. Like you need to actually have the money before you're like, oh, money's not important to me at all. It's very
Yeah.
interesting.
All right, man. And I think that the biggest thing is just coming from a place of like grace for yourself too. Not getting frustrated that you like wasted time because I see a lot of that happening, which is like someone tries something, gets so discouraged where they just stop entrepreneurship altogether and then just go back to a job. It's like, man, like you're gonna stop? Like, hey, like that to me is just data. It's just feedback on like what didn't work and what model I might have to change differently because a lot of these people like high ticket sales and remote sales is like the new business model the past like year and a half, but the truth is like just because it's the hot thing right now doesn't mean that you should be stepping into it, right? Like you have to be self-aware enough to know how you're engineered, know what your strengths are, know what your weaknesses are, so that when the right model does come along, you drive it well, right? You drive it well.
Yeah, there's almost no wasted time from what I've seen because you just gain so much experience and you learn not only what you don't want, but also that little thing that you learned with Shopify will then help you later when you're doing something else that's not related. And so it's like you spent the time to learn it now and now you have that and you know how to solve that type of problem.
Right, man. And it just
So
brings more experience to your overall business acumen, in my personal opinion. You know?
absolutely. The first sales team I was on when I saw all their automations, I was like, this is incredible. It's like go high level with automations like so many. So that
It's
was,
hilarious.
yeah, super cool to see. I wanted to ask you about you paid an energy management coach or an energy coach 5 grand to help
Yeah,
you
dude.
manage your energy in your state. I wanted to hear what that experience was like.
Dude, so that was one of probably the craziest, like, or one of the more crazier coachings that I've taken. Cause y'all gotta imagine this. I paid this guy 5 grand, and literally the first thing that we do on the first day is like set up Google calendars and bookmarks on my freaking computer. I'm like, what is this? like what is going on? It was like if y'all don't know like Karate Kid, like Mr. Miyagi, Daniel's son, like it was that first moment where Daniel's like trying to do all the fancy moves and Mr. Miyagi's having him like clean the car, or like wax on, wax off, right? And it kind of felt like that moment. And then I started realizing that energy and systems are so intertwined. That's why I call it like my energy rituals or my energy systems. Like they're all, you got to combine both the masculine and the feminine, and part of that masculine structure is systems, right? So what happened was he really got me to think about time so differently. So our calendars, y'all, I invite you all to think of it. Just like we have our business bank accounts, there's ledgers for money. Our calendar is our ledger for time. So if you don't account for your time, then you don't know where it's going. If we're not allocating our budget, we're going to go over or under. It's going to be all over the place. So if we don't allocate our time properly, if we don't have a budget for time, these things aren't going to work properly, right? And so the number one lesson that I got away from that, Jeff, was that it actually isn't about time management. What it really is a game of energy management. Because energy is really interesting. It is this thing that is both infinite and finite at the same time. Time, on the other hand, is obviously finite, right? So we have a finite time on this earth, and we have finite blocks where we can work on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly basis, right? But energy is really interesting because at the same time it is infinite, that we can tap into more and more energy. We can increase our capacity. We can like get to the point where I personally have more energy this year than I had last year. And it continues to expand, right? But it is also finite in that we have a given amount of energy we can use from a daily and weekly standpoint. So we have these rhythms within that, right? And so that was the biggest thing that I became aware to, was the rhythms of energy, at least my own, and how to properly choose not just like what I do on a day to day and week to week, but like literally the seasons that I step into in my life. So we always talk about how, you know, we want to step into like different time horizons, but it's not just about the time horizon. It's about like, how do I align my energy and what my intuition is leading me to how I allocate my time. And so this is a really big piece. So for example, man, you know, for people who don't know my story, I wanted a sabbatical for 4 months after burning out, like grinding for like 3 years. So like for 4 months, I had a season of just like traveling, closed down shop for biz, like was just going on dates, was just hanging out with people, hanging out with my family and friends, was just like decompressing and like doing a bunch of like, you know, like meditation, breath work, all this stuff in different places, right? But that was a season of life that was being called upon. So I spent 4 months as like engineered, intentional, designed like that. And when I moved to New York and like settled down here, I promised myself I would like to have this 3-week or 3-year push of just like building in business. And so I'm about like a year and a half into that. And, you know, it's a 3-year season where after this 3-year season, I'm going to go on another sabbatical to decompress. So I know myself, there's like from a yearly standpoint, like 3 to 5 year blocks serve me really well. From a seasonal standpoint, so I work really well in like 6-week sprints. So you have like your bigger box, and then you have your smaller box, and then you have your sprints, right? So my sprints are 6-week sprints. I can go really hard for about a 4 to 5 week period. Can like push it another 6 weeks, but then I'm gonna have to take a break for like a week or two. So funny enough, y'all are catching me at the tail end of like a 6-week sprint. So it's like midway of March. I'm actually next week going to be pulling back for the next 2 weeks as we get ready for Q2. So all of this is engineered.
Wow. Yeah, really planned ahead. I kind of go more with the flow for my seasons, but I had a similar just recently from November to February. had a 4 month season of just like, I'm not really sure what I want to do. I'm just going to focus on learning and being outside a lot.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
listened to that, and then that led me to some really cool interactions and experiences. And now I have so much more clarity on what I want to be doing.
That's awesome, man. See, and that's the problem is most people don't take that step out to just review, refine, and reflect, right? And what happens is like you stay too long in that journey and you end up going down a path on the wrong mountain that you didn't even want to go on the mountaintop on. And so when you are able to zoom out and step back, you're able to reassess, oh, yeah, no, I am in the right mountain or I'm not in the right mountain and then readjust, right?
Yeah, love it. Well, I think that's a good place for us to wrap it up. Do you have anything that you want to tell people to go check you out if they're interested in sales, they want to work with you? Is there somewhere they can find you?
Yeah, man. So, guys, if you're watching this, anything resonates, I have a free sales course and free sales school community. It's called The Sales Dojo. The Sales Dojo. You can search it up. Um, we could also put in the link in the description wherever that might be. But yeah, check it out. I invite you guys to go on there if it's something that like you want to learn more about sales. I go through a couple different things, so I share all the exact strategies, tactics, and frameworks that I personally use to close 5.4 million in high ticket sales. And then also the second biggest thing is like if you're looking to transition into a better offer or get into your first offer, I drop a lot of gold nuggets and strategies on how to land like that 6-figure sales offer on that as well. So that's really it. If you guys want to learn more about it, check it out. I'm very active on Twitter, so that's the place to find me if you guys just want to talk sales, have fun, and jam.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I can absolutely vouch that Larry knows his stuff. I've paid him for coaching multiple times and it resulted in a not just way higher close rate, but more of this stuff about energy management, just like more fulfillment in general and more clarity. So
Awesome, man.
I
Yeah.
appreciate you for that and
Thank you,
appreciate you
brother.
for coming on. Is there anything else you want to
No, I just
leave
want
the
to say,
listeners
man,
with or end with?
this has probably been one of my favorite like podcast conversations. To be honest, I didn't expect that we would go like this deep on this convo, and so I love it. Like I love the opportunity to like have these like real, raw, meaningful relationships with my friends, Jeff. So I just want to say my gratitude and thanks to you as a friend for inviting me on here. And let's continue to jam on offline after this as well. But thank you for inviting me here, man.
Yeah, thank you. It means a lot.
Awesome. Well, thanks, crew. Thanks for tuning in.